welcome everyone. It'd be good to get started. And really, thanks so much for attending today. This is our first conversation of the series for 2022. And I'm Margot Shea, and yes, I'm from soggy Sydney, and I agree with Nolene, the sun is shining at the moment. But can I remind you that this is not a Q&A, and it will be recorded, as you just saw on the screen. So please mute yourself now. And if you have any questions, type them into the chat room and with your email address, if you could, and we'll follow them up later. So before we commence our conversation, I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land each of us is on today. So you might like to silently name the land where you are. I'm on Wongal land of the Eora Nation. And as we acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land, we acknowledge our gratitude that we share this land. We acknowledge our sorrow for the costs of sharing, and we acknowledge our hope that we can move to a place of justice and partnership together. I extend this respect to any Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander person who may be present here today. So today's conversation offers us a wonderful opportunity to learn about the possibility of a slave-free Easter. We welcome our guests. You saw them a bit earlier, Fuzz and Carolyn Kitto and Peter Millard. In about 2008, I've been told, ACRATH hosted a meeting with the UK Stop the Traffic. With some other Australian NGOs, it was decided to start an Australian branch of Stop the Traffic. Carolyn and Fuzz were the second coordinators of that. And recently they changed the name to Be Slavery Free. They worked with ACRATH and other civil society groups to lobby the federal government for a Modern Slavery Act. And they were there in the Senate gallery with ACRATH when that act was passed in December 2018. A couple of years ago, Carolyn organised a slavery-free trade to India to look at the initiatives in the clothing industry. And Fuzz has been to West Africa, which we know is the source of the majority of the planet's cocoa. Fuzz and Carolyn have developed a strong relationship with Haigh's chocolates. Yes, it's my favourite too. So this is a great segue to introduce our third guest, Peter Millard. In December 2005, Peter's life changed when he was made redundant from the timber industry. 9 months later, he was offered a job at Haigh's Chocolate, South Australia, as the supply chain manager. After accepting the role, Peter was confronted with a clash of values, but he didn't throw the towel in. Rather, he worked to bring about change. Peter is now the Chief Operating Manager, and he has worked beside Be Slavery Free to lead Haig's to be a value-based company which values its staff and encourages its workers to think not just about their own practice, but the end product which they produce. So we look forward to listening to their journeys, and I invite Cindy Bowen, ACRATH's Community Development Officer, to lead us in today's conversation. Thanks, Cindy.
Hello, everyone, and thanks, Marg. Welcome, Peter and Fuzz and Carolyn. So while we wait for people to pop up on the screen, thanks, Joe. Joe's always behind the scenes doing all this work. Thanks. I suppose, Carolyn, just to start us off, the name tells us a lot, Be Slavery Free. Tell us a little bit about who and what are Be Slavery Free.
So as was said in the introduction, Be Slavery Free is an organisation. It actually started in Australia in 2005, and at that point in time it was a coalition between the Salvation Army and World Vision. I was working for World Vision at the time, and it was basically to mark the 200th anniversary of the abolition of the transatlantic slave trade, which was a remarkable achievement. However, it was recognised that there were now more slaves in the world today than at any other time in human history. And so it was decided that just as William Wilberforce had taken a petition, and it was the first petition ever taken to a parliament. If you've ever seen the movie Amazing Grace, and if you haven't, get it out or go on whatever network you're on and watch it. He got the people to sign a petition, and he rolled it down the aisle in the British House of Commons, where he was a member. And so we thought, we've got to do this again. And so that was the beginning. It was only ever meant to be a one-year campaign. We determined that 200 years later, the equivalent of the British Parliament and the British Empire was probably the United Nations. And so a petition, we aimed for 1 million signatures, and we got 1.5 million signatures worldwide to take to the United Nations. Now, during that time, what was also discovered was that this was not something that was going to be fixed with a petition. Things really are. And there'd been emerging issues around child labour and what we now call modern slavery in supply chains of chocolate companies in West Africa. And there'd been very little movement from the companies, even though they'd promised that they would eradicate this. And so we started our first campaign. 2006 was focusing on chocolate.
Thank you. Wow. So many synergies, like 200 years ago, and then the royal family are in the Caribbean last week, right. And there's sort of a protest about what's going, what has and what is going on. So great to have that historical context. Fuzz, the trip to West Africa, it's been mentioned twice, or West Africa's been mentioned twice. Can you tell us a little bit about maybe what you saw, or because often we want to keep the people at the heart of our work, or tell us something about that experience in West Africa?
It's been 3 or 4 times I've been to West Africa now, and until you go to a place until you can see it, till you hear it, till you smell it, and smell's a big one, until you can taste it, but more than anything, as you relate with the people there, you're never going to fully understand a situation until you get into that sort of induction that happens. There is a wonderful thing, and because we're talking with ACRATH, we all use some faith language here. I guess that all the understanding of God was never fully seen until God became a person in Jesus and came amongst us. So we're doing that tradition of actually being there. And when you are there, it is so totally different. The cocoa farms are just beautiful. The cocoa trees are just beautiful trees. And to be out there with all the fallen leaves down in this carpet of greens and yellows and multicolored, it is quite beautiful. But what happens on those farms is a thing that really grabs your heart, in the poverty that is there, in the struggles that they go through, in the complexities of what has caused that, because it is a systemic problem. When you have systemic problems, you need systemic solutions. And in being there and talking and listening, most of all with the people, sometimes out in isolated areas, but how isolated, that is a big point at the moment, isn't it? I was at one place just out of Davios, which is one of the centres in Côte d'Ivoire, Ivory Coast. Some people might still remember it as. And we were having a training session on child labour. And they were using this phenomenal thing, which has them absolutely mesmerised, this new technology called a flip chart. And as they had cartoons of these flip charts, and it was being translated into both local language and French, because it was a French colony. It's one of their major languages. They're mesmerised, and I'm thinking, oh, I've got to have a look at this. And so under this scribbly shelter of stick shelter, probably about 150 people, the whole village was there. All the children are playing around the outside. The older ones are sort of, in the front, and then the middle-aged, and then the younger ones at the back. And so I need a picture of them looking at this training of this flip chart. So I edge across, because I've got to sit at the front, because that's where the Mazumbas have to sit. And so I go there around the back just to have a look across all these people looking at this flip chart on this scribbly shelter, and with my camera. And then someone in the middle turns around and sees me, and this murmur just spreads out to the group. And out comes probably about 90 smartphones taking a picture of me, taking a picture of them out in the middle of the jungle. So isolation, yes, but also connected. That has some helpful points and some unhelpful ones, because young people can then see what's happening in the cities, and they're going, why would we struggle in this poverty? Why would we struggle with all the things going on here when we could go to the city and we could do those things? So there are so many things in that. But when you are there and you relate to the people and you listen to the people, and you start to get such a deeper insight into what's happening there, why it's happening there, then of course we work on what do we do about that.
Fuzz, thank you. The beauty aspect is an area I hadn't thought about. It's often the people and the conditions. So thank you. And taking us into a place, because I'm sure each of us have tried a bit of chocolate before Easter. So moving into Peter. Peter, I guess my question to you is, it's a chocolate business. How did Haig's, or how did you get in touch with Be Slavery Free?
Yeah, I guess from my perspective, I came into this Be Slavery Free, Stop the Traffic, were kind of the enemies, it felt like at the start. It was very much a situation where, my first Easter here, I hadn't really thought about it a lot. And the first Easter, we were getting all these emails from people, and they were all sort of quoting the Stop the Traffic. What are you doing about slavery in your supply chains? And it suddenly struck me that actually that's kind of an issue for me, and it's kind of a conflict in my own values, and I'm not real happy about that. But I didn't know what to do about it. And I think for me, it led to probably 3 responses, and I think they're pretty ineffective. But it's kind of that despair of how did I get myself in this situation? How am I working in an industry that has compromises in it? A defence one, which is, we're really not that bad, and it's not us that's the problem. I'm doing a lot of good stuff in my work here, and that's okay, and please go away, because this is not something I want to deal with. And third is that sort of denial, which is, I'm just a small person here in Australia, I really can't influence the industry, and there's not much I can do about it, so just go away and ignore it. But that was really my first interaction with it, and it's pretty easy to sit this side of the table and to feel like that. I'm doing a good job. Why are these people picking on me? And that's a not a nice place to be in as in your new job either, I guess.
Yeah. Peter, there was a random moment when you met up with Fuzz and Carolyn. Is that right?
Well, no. I think for me it probably starts with how do we respond to that? And I ended up, my son was in a mainly music group at the local Salvation Army church, and they invited all the families along to a Sunday morning service, which I kind of joined in with. And instead of having a sermon, the captain stood up the front and talked to us about slavery in the chocolate supply chain, and I kind of felt pretty uncomfortable and got a little bit grumpy and thought, what does this guy know? He's just reading some lines from a book. And it actually happened the next day. We were having a meeting, and we were discussing the marketing problem of we're getting all these emails around Be Slavery Free, and it kind of had prompted me enough to say, actually, this is something I'm not comfortable with, and maybe there's something we can do about it. And the very first thing to do was to say, let's stop pushing these people away. Let's invite them in, and that was a real significant moment in our team. Rather than seeing Fuzz and Carolyn and the wider group of you guys who are probably all likewise sending emails and postcards in, to say, rather than see you as the other side of the fence, let's see if we can get the same side of the fence of you, express our own concerns about it, and talk to you about the struggles we have change it. And I think that's, for me, is always a great starting point. And you know, maybe 12 months or so later, we managed to get all together and sat down, and what we found was Fuzz and Carolyn were well informed about the industry. They knew the challenges we had, and they had high expectations of us. And I think for me, that was really powerful, that idea that people were expecting a whole lot of me, that he gave me something to live up to and challenge to do. And when you heard Fuzz in his enthusiasm sort of saying, well, we're hoping that next year we can do something under this program, and you start thinking, well, it's possible, and what might we be able to do? So I think it's that shift from despair, defense, and denial into what can I do about it? And this is an important issue for me. How do I do a little bit? And by starting a little bit, all of a sudden it becomes lots of bits.
Peter, thank you. So Fuzz or Carolyn, do you want to talk about that? Like, you could have gone in and gone, let's do this, but Peter's saying you didn't do that. You worked. Tell us how you worked so you can do it together, so there's not that defensive sort of denial sort of.
Sure. Well, it was actually interesting. I'm not sure if Peter remembers this, but kind of the first meeting that we had, the Haig's people were sitting at one end of the board table and we were on the other side of the board table, and they all had their arms crossed. And I think it was about the third meeting, we were all bunched around the table, and we were all at the same board table, and we were all leaning in, and we were, it was just a total transformation. But that's the approach that we use. We moved very much from a name and shame to what we call a name and fame approach, and it with also name and change. That is, that we talk about the industry, both consultants, industry bodies, key players in the industry, and we articulate the problem as we see it, and we say what would be the change that would start to solve this problem. And then we start to talk to people about that. So as Peter said, we said to Haig's, well, we think you could think about doing this, this, and this, and that would help. Now, to do that, you have to have a really deep knowledge of an industry. We've made some mistakes over the years of telling industries to do certain things that are actually incredibly difficult for them to do. So we have to be very careful that we understand the business model. Haig's has a unique business model in that there are very few companies that are what's called bean to bar. So they actually process their own beans, whereas a lot of other companies are using a liquor or powder to bar approach. So we had to understand what Haig's business model of being bean to bar meant, what that meant for its supply chains. We have to understand something about the culture of the organisation. So you come with an inquiry approach, and rather than now they all think that you're coming to condemn them, there are from time to time companies that will not engage, that will not have a conversation, that are very combative themselves. So but that's not the approach that we take. So that's built huge relationships in the industry, to the point now where we get companies writing to us and saying, can we be in your scorecard? So the only way, it's one of our bylines, the only way we're going to end this is together. And we were just talking with some of our academic partners, and they talk about wicked problems. And wicked problems, one of the things about a wicked problem is it needs to be solved by people who wouldn't normally talk to each other, having collaborative conversations. There are a lot of other signs, but that's one of the elements, is to have a collaborative conversation with people that you might normally be in combat with.
Yeah. You mentioned something and Peter was nodding. So there's sort of a synergy, there's sort of stories. One thing before we go into your partners and your scorecard, I suppose I need to say that I think I've made a mistake because I, with Rosie, headed up some of the Instagram posts around a slavery-free Easter.
Mhm.
And when I've been talking to you, I think I'm learning that we actually can't guarantee that it's a slavery-free chocolate. So help us understand that, because we want to be right. But so, and oh my God, we made a mistake, but it's okay to make mistakes in our community.
Sure.
So can someone explain what it means to have these certifications?
Yeah, well, that was the road that we take, and it's been a whole evolution, Peter, hasn't it? For all of us in this, we thought, okay, what can we do is the primary thing. So what we've learned is never ask a business to do something they can't do. It's just a roadblock when you try and do that. And the thing that we often say is to move from behind to best, or to move from bad to best, is a road, and the road is called better. And so it's a journey, it's a progress that you go through. And so we've actually found that there have been ways that the industry has changed and understood this. But to say we can guarantee that that this is slavery free is an impossibility. No one will guarantee that. And I'm not sure how they could guarantee that, because it's a crime. It's something that people cover up, and exposing that when you're looking at the fact that around about 98% of cocoa farms are smallhold farms. So we're talking about 2 to 6 acres is what most of the farms. So we've got millions of cocoa farmers. So trying to get on the ground to actually sort of give a guarantee for that is an impossibility. We are all wanting and we're all working towards it being slavery free, but there's no way that we can say it is slavery free.
So we would talk about moving towards a slavery free industry.
Okay.
But we would never talk about a particular block of chocolate or a particular brand being slavery free. Even Tony Chocolonely's has a little logo who pride themselves on being the most slavery free.
Because that's why they were set up.
Because that's why they were set up
as a company,
was to produce slavery free chocolate. On their logo, it says building a slavery free and child labour free industry. But Tony Chocolonely's came out. So you will find on our scorecard that there are companies that receive a green egg for child labour, which is the highest score that you can get, who have come out publicly and said that they have child labour and worse forms of child labour in their supply chain.
Okay.
And in fact, we give people points, they score positively if they admit that they've got child labour in their supply chain. Because if you think about it, 75% of the world's cocoa comes from West Africa, 1.53 million children in child labour. If the 38 companies on our scorecard, which cover 90% of the chocolate industry, if none of them have got child labour in their supply chains, then they're not looking.
Yeah.
We've got a bunch of students here from a secondary school, and like all of us others, we all like chocolate probably, unless we're allergic or we really don't like it. Tell us about the scorecard and tell us how it's researched. Like, how do you get onto it? But also, how do we know that the green egg is, nearly slavery-free? We're working towards slavery-free.
We have a very virulent process that we go through. We're working with 3 academics. We call them the professors team, and they're great at Macquarie University, Wollongong University, and the Open University in the UK. And so we team up with them. First of all, we go through an ethics process through the university, which you have to do whenever you are working with human beings. And so it's gone through an ethics process. We then go to the industry and we ask chocolate companies, what are the questions that we need to ask to actually get to what is happening and to understand the situation. So there are 3 social issues: traceability, living income, and child labor, then 3 environmental ones, because they are so intertwined. So agroforestry, what's the diversity of the other trees that are there? Deforestation and climate change, because in Côte d'Ivoire, for instance, in the last 50, 60 years, they have deforested 80% of their country. And of course, that is causing climate change, which affects what's happening. But then we've added this year also agrochemicals in the what they do and how they manage and how they train, and the way that children of the 1.56 million, 1.48 million children have had to seek medical attention or be hospitalized because of the pesticides and the chemicals that they are using. So we've put that in as well. So what we do then is we go to the experts in those areas. Now, we have what is called an expertise. We actually don't think there are any experts anymore. We refer to ourselves as lead learners, and because there's still so much to learn continuously. And so what we do is we then have people who are lead learners in each of those 6 areas that we go through. We work with the Voice Network, which is an NGO that we are members of. It's a coalition that are working in the cocoa industry. And Friedel from the Sudwin Institute, and Tony and Anthony, who is the head of the Voice Network. So we talk to them. We talk to the International Children's
Cocoa Initiative.
Cocoa Initiative, set up by companies and NGOs that work on child labour. And so what we do is we get the feedback from them on the questions, but then we go to the companies and we say, here's the answers. We need you to verify the answers that you are given. That is public knowledge, that you've got it on your website or reports, etc., that have come out. We then get the academics and Tel that we work with, who's a genius in the environmental areas, been working on it for many years. She's a lawyer, PhD. We all think one day we're going to wake up and find that she's actually been appointed the General Secretary of the United Nations. She's that caliber. And so we check that through, and then we send the answers to double check back to the expert come lead learners in those 6 areas to check that through. And then we give a score by coloured egg.
Yeah.
And so green, yep, these are in the champion, the leading areas. Yellow, these are doing a lot of work in the area. Orange, they've got a bit of way to go. And red, they are way behind and they've got a lot of work to do. Or a broken egg if they actually decide that they are not going to fill it in and respond, which there are only 3 companies that did that. So it's quite a process that we go through where we listen, when we offer to each company, if you want to talk it through with us beforehand, before you answer, so you get all the understanding of what we're asking for. And 32 out of the 39 companies picked that up. So that was 32 11 p.m. and midnight meetings for a month and a half. And then we offer afterwards that we'll go through with them what their score is and what we think they need to improve in, or what they can do. And we often say, and these are the people who can help you to do that.
Right.
Or go and talk to this other company because they're champions in that area. Learn from each other on this.
Yeah. Thank you. So very detailed. I'm conscious of the time. Peter, what does it mean for you at Haigh to be on the scorecard? And correct me, when does this...
Not on the scorecard.
Not on the scorecard.
And that's probably, a reflection there of where we feel in the situation. We're a really small player in the industry.
That's right.
Yep.
And our capacity to influence. So, we're tied in through the Rainforest Alliance, and that's sort of our step in the process. And we have, we're very reliant on those sort of third-party organisations to offer, certified supply chains and supporting us. But I think for us, it's really about, recognising as a team that how do you actually pull this all together? And I think everyone in the business is really conscious of this issue, and nobody wants to sit there and say, you've got slavery in your supply chain. But at the same time, we also recognise we're small and we're a small part of this, but what we try to do is recognize that we pull together around values. So, we're an organization that's not a Christian organization, we're a business.
Yeah.
And while I might come from a Baptist faith, we've got people who are Muslims and Hindus. We've got, a diverse range of Christian faiths. We've got people who've got no faith. But within that, there's a sense that we can pull people together around values. And I think that's really our message. As a values-driven organisation, we want to be an organisation that does the right thing in relation to each other and in relation to the rest of our supply chain. And for us, that's really a unifying point and a tying point. And this idea of being able to be certified by an international body as being, providing good cocoa is really powerful, and it's a real unifying sense around the business. We've done something significant, even us sitting here in Adelaide, in our small capacity to influence, have done something. And for us, one of the powerful things was being a leader in this, is we recognised how quickly everyone was able to get on board with that. And that wasn't a disappointment to us. That was about the joy that everyone else has now picked up on, the secret that we were a year or two ahead of, that this is doable and this is something we can make a difference on. And it feels good to be a part of an industry that while it still has compromises, is doing something about it. And I think that's a powerful uniter, not just within our organisation, but across our industry.
Thank you, Peter. And I'm sorry about that little misunderstanding.
No, that's fine.
Cindy, let me say that, and we've not asked Haigh to come into the scorecard because their model and what they can do, they're working at capacity of what they can do. And we promote. We'll do a little blog which says, and what about Haigh? Because that's what you're asking. And we will say Haigh are doing basically everything that they can do, and we highly commend Haigh for what they are doing.
Yes, I was hoping my mistake didn't mean a negative. We don't view that as a negative. So thank you. I'm conscious that we've gone 1 minute over, and the thing that we often ask our guests is to put a challenge out. The people on this screen are all very interested in making the world a fairer place. So is there, and I suppose we need to be quite quick about it, is there something you can encourage us to do as we close our screens today, or as we head into Easter, or even in a year? We've got all sorts of people here all across Australia. We've got secondary kids, but we've also got a whole lot of other people sitting, and we come from different backgrounds. Just a quick thought, and then we'll final.
If I can start from a business perspective, I think one of the key things for us is we hear your noise that you make. So if you're, when you were as a group talking around slavery in the cocoa supply chain, we hear it. We understand and we know that that's an important issue to you guys. I think the most important thing is have high expectations and respect are the two things that I put together. Don't be afraid to walk into a business and say, I would love you guys to be slavery free, or I'd love you guys to be working on this thing. And to be respectful, I understand that there's someone sitting behind that counter who can't do much about it. But, I've got expectation that I want to see you guys do better. And that just brings that sense of bringing people alongside of you. If you can come in, talk respectively, talk passionately about your issue, be well informed, then you'll be making a difference, because as an organisation, we hear those messages. They do get through, and they do drift up to people who've got influence over them. So I encourage you to don't be afraid to be noisy, be respectful, and have high expectations. Be my challenge to you guys.
Thank you, Peter. Okay, Fuzz or Carolyn?
One of the things that, and just following on from the scorecard, because your question was, what can the students here do? It's just what can we all do? And that is choose what you buy, and we don't boycott, we boycott. So in other words, choose to support those companies who are trying to do something about this. And Be Slavery Free is not a Christian organization, had many Christians and Jewish and other people in it as well. But one of the things we say to those who've got a faith and students, if you've done your religious education, it's about Jesus, and you may have heard the term WWJD, what would Jesus do? It's a great question, but we want to do the other one, which is WWJB. What would Jesus buy? And so within that, it's where's your values? How are you applying your values on the things that you buy and the things that you support? Because when we're buyers, we've got incredible power. Support those who are trying to do good things.
Thank you, Fuzz.
And can I have one? Can I have
Thanks,
one?
Carolyn. Yes, please.
We will also have a petition. Fuzz mentioned the link between chemical management and child labour. That's such a huge number of children are impacted by chemicals. These are largely systemic chemicals that have the potential to cause things like pancreatic cancer, brain damage, etc., etc. Glyphosate, which is now banned in many, many countries. We'll have a petition. Over half of the chocolate companies on our scorecard do not have adequate policies to address that issue.
Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you, the three of you. Thank you to everyone in the background. And I'm sorry we've gone over time, and we're very strict with our time because we know a lot of you are with bells or ready for lunch and things like that. I guess thank you. It's always good to be challenged. It's always good to be hopeful. You've given us a sense of hope because really this could be a disastrous sort of sense. And there are lots of other questions about what else could we do. But thank you. I guess for everyone here, our next conversation is the same time next month, the last Wednesday of the month. And next time it will be campaigning, looking at campaigning. So, or advocacy. So thank you. And if you want more information or if you have a question in the chat room, in the chat, please put that up and we'll endeavour to get back to you. So Fuzz, Carolyn and Peter, thank you. I can't say that enough. Very helpful and very easy to sort of chat with. So thanks a lot.
No problem.
Thank you. Great to share it with
Easter,
Peter too.
everyone.